Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to MMA Unhinged. And as you can see behind me, Brendan Moreno, Amir Albazi in the middle, Rose Namajunas back in Canada this weekend. UFC, it's going to be fun. Oscar, how are you?
How can you not be excited for a fight night of this magnitude? The UFC really put a lot of effort into making sure that this is a card that they can present in front of the Canadian fans that's full of Canadian talent. They brought in international stars as well. You got Brandon Moreno, you got Rosendam Eunice, Derek Lewis. UFC really made sure to put together a worthy card for these fans. So I'm very excited to break that down, but I'm not as excited to recap UFC 308 from last Saturday because that was a card where we saw frankly, some depressing finishes if you're a fan of Max Holloway and Robert Whitaker, which I am. Those are two of the nicest guys in the sport, two of the most accomplished guys within their divisions, and they lost to the younger, fresher guys out there, and that's just how the sport is. The young eat the old. That's how it works. Lenny, what did you make of this UFC 308 event in Abu Dhabi? It was a spectacular one.
That's the best way to put it. Spectacular for a fan as a spectacle. It was insane, and as a British fan, it was great to watch in the evening. Sat there at 10 p.m. watching the main event. It was beautiful, spectacular. I loved it, and the main event itself, it delivered. It was a great fight. And, it was going on to be if the fight wasn't ended, it was going to be on to be still a fantastic fight. Max Holloway bringing the heat, the pressure, as expected. But Ilia Topuria, we knew what he had. We had that kill shot. And in my whole years of watching MMA and stuff, I'd never thought I'd see Max Holloway even knocked down because he's been hit with some of the hardest shots in the world by Justin Gaethje, etc. Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, you name it. He's been there. He's been hit. And we've never even seen him knocked down, stumbled. But Ilia Topuria put him on skates, Oscar, on skates.
Yeah, this was honestly eye-opening from Ilia Topuria. We had seen him knock out many guys in the past, including Alexander Volkanovski, who had 3 wins over Max Holloway. But what we've seen from Max Holloway is a guy that can take an enormous amount of punishment and keep moving forward. In fact, he absorbed a record amount of strikes without getting knocked down heading into this. So for Topuria not only to drop him, but to finish him was insane. So in round 1, you had Ilia Topuria marching forward, trying to get those shots going, but Max Holloway was able to win that first round. But that second round changed a lot, especially after Ilia Topuria was able to mix in a little bit of grappling here and there, was able to land the bigger shots, I felt. And in round 3, he finally found the target, and he was able to rock smack Max Holloway, force him to move back and be defensive. And eventually he just landed that huge left hook, and the ground and pound finished the job. Max Holloway was legitimately put asleep in this fight. Ilia Topuria has extraordinary power. You could argue he might be the most powerful featherweight we've seen in there since like Conor McGregor. This guy's on another level. He might be the most skilled fighter in the sport today. We just have to see how far his career goes. But honestly, the sky is the ceiling for this man. He's still in his 20s. He could retire as one of the greatest of all time if he keeps this up.
Yeah, and he's up there with the argument of fighter of the year against Alex Pereira. And right now, I would still lean towards Alex Pereira because what he's done for the sport, stepping in, etc. But Ilia Topuria throwing his name into that is absolutely sensational. A knockout against Alexander Volkanovski, following it up against Max Holloway. And by the way, that's Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski, both in their prime. And he's knocking them out. This guy's a savage. Oscar, I'm going to ask you, before this, he was a champion. He was a superstar already. But after this fight, do you feel like his stock has just gone beyond ridiculous now? He's going to go on to be... He could possibly be up there, one of the biggest stars in MMA right now, up there with Sugar Sean O'Malley, up there with Alex Pereira. Do you think he's probably the biggest one that we have inside the UFC? And with that, do you think the UFC are going to go to Spain as soon as possible to get, to capitalize on that market?
Yeah, they're already talking to Barcelona and Madrid about going there next year. So 100%. And from the looks of it, we could be getting Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez in February. Those are just rumors right now. Hopefully they're true because it appears that Ilia Topuria is only interested in fighting in Spain. And you can't have those two guys just on the shelf. I feel like we should see the fight to determine who gets that shot, especially for Volkanovski, who's been on the shelf for so long and he deserves the fight in Australia. So that fight makes a lot of sense. And in the fight of the year conversation, I'm actually in the camp that Taporia is the guy right now because of the quality of his opposition. These are two of the greatest featherweights we've ever seen, multiple title defenses. While Pereira, he fought Khalil Rountree, who was number 8 at the time, which honestly is not that impressive in my eyes. So, Ilia Taporia, all the credit in the world to him. Incredible power, incredible star potential. In terms of star rankings, I would say he's below Alex Pereira and like Hamza Chimaev on a global scale. But with how marketable he is, he speaks 3 languages. That is huge for him, and he's also helping boost 2 international markets, Spain and Georgia, 2 markets that have a lot of growth potential. So yeah, honestly, he could go down as the biggest star in UFC history if he keeps on winning. With how big of a reach he has in Georgia and Spain, along with the fact that he speaks English, it's great for his marketability.
Absolutely agree. Looking forward to see what the future holds for Ilia Topuria. It's going to be in Spain. I think the UFC are going to have that next one in Spain 100%, no doubt in my mind. Next one, we saw a young dog take out a veteran again. Hamzat Chimaev. We knew how good he was. Throughout his last fight, obviously, he's had this, lingering issues with injuries, etc. Blah blah blah. If he got past Robert Whittaker, I said last week, sorry. If he got past Robert Whittaker, he would jump the gun in front of Sean Strickland. But it had to be a spectacular, it had to be a statement, and that's exactly what it was. Oscar, round 1, face crank, sorry, damages the teeth of Robert Whittaker. You've probably seen the photo. Everyone's seen that photo that circulated all over social media. His teeth sort of like collapsed inside and facing the complete wrong way. It just shows you how strong this man is if he gets a hold of your neck. Hamzat Chimaev, completely the real deal. And I suspect him jumping the gun for the 185-pound shot.
Yeah, that's the way it looks with Hamzat having an insanely quick finish of Robert Whittaker. Nobody really does this to Whittaker, especially at 185. He had some tough moments in his young career at welterweight, but at 185, he's been an incredible force of nature. And Hamzat Chimaev is just an even more unstoppable force. The way he fights is just centered around getting the early finish, which is why I picked Whittaker because I thought Whittaker would be able to survive that early onslaught and take advantage later on. But with Hamzat Chimaev, you would be lucky to survive that early onslaught. He came in great form. You could tell that he was a lot healthier than he was in previous times. The way he acted during fight week, he was a lot more humble. He has matured in many ways, and he's looking better than ever out there. Robert Whittaker was able to reach a near get up during this fight, but Hamzat was able to advance to his legs very quickly, get back in the mount. And Robert Whittaker says he's always had a loose teeth, and you do not want to have loose teeth if you're fighting Hamzat Chimaev because he's going to crank on that jaw and break it. That's what he did here. And for Sean Strickland, this is a guy that's been very content to wait ever since he reached the championship status. He's trying to change his mindset. He wants to wait for these opportunities. It's not very smart in this day and age because the UFC will put whoever is available in there. And Hamzat Chimaev has taken advantage of Strickland's inactivity, and he's kind of made himself undeniable. So I believe Chimaev is a bigger star worldwide than Sean Strickland, and that will probably allow him to step in there against Dricus du Plessis in February.
Yeah, whether Sean Strickland likes it or not, I feel like he's going to have to wait a little bit longer for his title shot. And the UFC could play a little bit of a game and pay him a little bit of money just to step aside. We see it in boxing. Maybe we could see that inside the UFC and MMA to let Hamzat Chimaev get that title shot. I think he deserves it. and I'm pretty sure I'm looking at looking at how everyone's reacting on Twitter, social media. It kind of seems like everyone wants Hamza Chimaev to get that shot. So seems like we're on the same page. Next one, Magomed Ankalaev at £205 against Alexander Rakic. We spoke last week, and a statement victory to prove that he's number one contender at £205. After the first round, it was looking quite tricky. Rakic was in there, holding his own, wasn't he?
Yeah, Rakic won round one of this fight in my eyes. Magomed Ankalaev, it kind of looked like he had a staph infection coming to this fight, so I kind of want to give him a pass in that regard. But still, you hear how this guy talked before the fight. He said that the UFC said you have to make this exciting. Magomed Ankalaev did not fight different at all. I guess the only thing you could say is he didn't really shoot a takedown in here. He started grappling with Rakic, started grappling in round three. But outside of that, he fought the same old way he always does. He stayed on the outside, waited for the counter shots. Rakic was able to land a lot of leg kicks. That's the major success he had in this fight. But the big moment of the fight was round two when Magomed Ankalaev was able to rock Rakic on the feet, make him retreat. Rakic was retreating the whole time, but after he landed that big left hand, I believe it was, he really had him on skates there for a second. So Ankalaev had a fairly dominant performance in this fight. And Rakic, honestly, I feel is stuck in a position where he can't really reach a title shot anymore because of how good these top contenders are. But for Magomed Ankalaev, he did his job. And honestly, he shouldn't have had to take this fight to get a title shot. But in Dana's eyes, it appeared he finally convinced him.
Yeah, agree. Magomed Ankalaev will be next for Alex, obviously the champ, Alex Pereira. And if I'm Alex, obviously who would have been watching this fight this weekend, last weekend, I'm licking my lips a little bit. I think there was vulnerability. I think Magomed Ankalaev was vulnerable in this fight, and there's some holes that Alex could potentially take use of. I think Magomed was getting clipped a lot. I think Alexander Rakic showed that. And if you're Alex, you don't want to get clipped by Alex. And you talked about it. There wasn't a shot, and I was a bit surprised. I thought, Magomed going to go take him down, get a submission. But it seems like we've seen recently that Magomed Ankalaev just wants to stand there and strike, and if the takedown comes, the takedown comes. And again, that's good for Alex Pereira. That's what he wants. So if I'm Alex, I'm licking my lips a little bit, and I'm liking this performance of Magomed Ankalaev, and it boosts my confidence that I can actually beat this guy. So if I'm Alex, it's great. Magomed Ankalaev should be next, and I believe that could be the talk for 310, as with Belal Muhammad Shavkat Rakhmonov is no longer happening. If there is a man to call, it is Poltan. Let's see what happens. Next one, Leroy Murphy versus Danny Ige. Leroy Murphy, great contender, great fighter, 15-0, beats Danny Ige, 30-27. There was a 29-28 scorecard. I was a bit confused about it. In my opinion, might have been a little bit biased. I thought Leroy Murphy got 30-27. I think he won all three cards, three rounds.
Whoa, I don't think you watched that round one where Leroy Murphy got dropped by Danny Ige. I think, yeah. In fact, you could have scored it a draw, honestly, with how bad the damage was in round one.
Yeah, but I did like the way Leroy Murphy came back, and after he got dropped, he came back. Took Danny Ige down, held him down for a bit. Yeah, he didn't do no damage, but there was a little bit of control time there.
Yeah, for sure. Leroy Murphy showed that he can overcome adversity. He had to overcome adversity when he fought Edson Barbosa. He had a huge upkick from Barbosa in that round one. So Murphy can take damage and he can overcome it and win these tough decisions. Danny Ige is historically a gatekeeper in this division, and Murphy passed this test with flying colors. And I expect Murphy to get a bigger fight after this, keep climbing the ranks. And for Danny Ige, you have to feel bad for him. He took that short notice fight with Diego Lopez. They said something big is next for you, and it really wasn't. It was a fight with Leroy Murphy, who was ranked, I believe, like just one spot above him. So for Murphy, this is a good showcase fight, finally on the main card of a pay-per-view.
Absolutely agree. Next one, Sharat Magomedov, the Bullet, doing some Tekken moves inside the octagon. Double spinning back fist, as you can see there. Maybe the first of the UFC, maybe the first of MMA. It was fantastic. Done a spinning back fist and then followed it up with another spinning back fist. Tremendous stuff. It's like playing a video game with this guy. Arman was doing well until he wasn't. This fight was good for Shara. I think he showed a little bit more tools I'm still not heavily confident on how where his future can go, but another feather in his cap, another win, 15-0. The guy's a star. He's got great following in Russia, etc. But I feel like when once we get down the line, I feel like we're going to see him challenge a lot more. But another spectacular knockout, double spinning back fist. It was stupendous to watch.
Yeah, you talk about the video game nature of that knockout. I'm
Oh,
an
that yeah,
avid player of UFC 5. That's not even a possibility in the video game. You can only swing that back fist in one direction. So Shah Magomedov is extraordinary with that creativity with his striking. I've seen clips of people doing it before, but nobody has done this in the UFC yet. And he didn't do it against some grappler who was aimless on the feet. No, this was Armin Petrosian, a man with a rich kickboxing background, and he knocked him out brutally in round two. And Shah was kind of styling on him before that knockout. That round one was competitive, but Shah was taking over. And now Shara already has a date on the books, February 1st, I believe it is, in Saudi Arabia. So this guy's staying active. He's getting finishes, and he's looking awesome while doing it. So you have to be on that Shara bullet train because this guy is such an entertainer, and he has great star potential, honestly. Now he's cranked the top 15 of the division. So expect to see him in a big fight next. Me personally, I would love to see him fight Paulo Costa.
absolutely agree. I'd like to see Michael Venom Page. I think that would be a fantastic one. I know Michael Venom Page expressed interest actually in fighting the Bullet and going up to 185 pounds. So make sure you keep an eye on that one. But yeah, another great win for Shara Bullet. Let's see where he goes down the line. And that was the main card. The main card was absolutely fantastic. Finishes, great moments. Let's talk about the prelims. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the biggest ones that stood out for me. Jeff Neal obviously beating RDA in a bit of an anticlimactic end, but I felt like it was only going to go one way anyway. I think we were going to see either RDA knocked out like that, rather bad, or so basically we're kind of a little bit lucky it ended like that. RDA obviously his knee blew out, I believe, but yeah, some really fantastic fights. Mateusz Rebecki versus Orobly, one a great fight in the prelims. We had Kenny Nchuku versus Chris Barnett, and that whole sequence of Barnett blowing his knee out. It was tremendous stuff. And obviously we had some really great fights at start of the evening as well. Isman Nordiev, came in, I believe short notice, beating Bruno Silva. I thought Bruno Silva, a few fights ago was sort of legit, but now sort of getting knocked off his horse a little bit. Victor Hugo versus Wade Basharat. We had some really good fights on the prelims, but the ones that stood out to me, obviously, was Rebecca and Orobly. They went to war that fight. Orobly's eye just all ballooned up. It was awful. But yeah, fantastic on the prelims. Oscar, what are your main takeaways from the prelims?
Yeah, I just can't get that Natasha Rombetsky, Nick Tipek, or Labai fight out of my head. It was just a perfect display of the endurance of the human spirit. You see Mick Tipek or Labai, it almost looked like he was on the verge of death, and then he would just get up in reverse position and inflict damage on an exhausted Rombetsky. I love the fight. It showed what Mick DeBeck was made of. This is a guy that kind of struggled a little bit with his weight cut. He couldn't get his visa until midway through the fight week, and he goes out there and still puts on a show. It makes it a competitive fight. It was a split decision, but for me, it was very clear that Rompechki was the winner of this fight. Excellent bounce back after having a horrible loss to Diego Ferreira earlier in the year. So this is a fight that for sure will be nominated in my top 4 fights of the year.
Absolutely agree. Fantastic. Abuz Magomedov as well getting the submission victory. Good victory as expected. Bruno Ferreira came in there. He was game, but until that third round, he just completely ran out of steam. And Abuz Magomedov just had enough in the tank and got the victory. Chris Barnett, that situation was obviously it is what it is. But yeah, that was 308. It was great to see how many moments there are. One of the biggest cards in the of the year. This was in terms of stardom, who we had on the on the card, and I felt like it delivered. Oscar, did you feel like it delivered as well?
Yeah, it surely delivered from an action standpoint, but me being such a fanboy for Rob and Max, it was tough to watch. I felt like I got kicked in the nuts watching that main event, honestly. So
Like,
it was a rough watch, but hey, if you like action, if you like knockouts, you like finishes, that's what you got, which was been kind of lacking recently in the UFC, if we're being honest. But this is another event we have coming up this weekend that I believe will deliver the goods once again.
absolutely agree. And let's find out what. And let's get it on the screen. This weekend we have Brandon Moreno versus Emil Albazi. Emil Albazi, Brandon Moreno, two top five contenders in the UFC flyweight division. Brandon Moreno, obviously former champion. Emil Albazi, 17-1, the biggest moment of his career this weekend against the former champion in Brandon Moreno, the Lego champ. Emir Albazi trained at Extreme Couture, coming off a split decision win over Kai Kara France. 5-0 inside the UFC. He's beat Francisco Figueiredo, Zumagulov. This one, though, this is where we find out what he's about. Brandon Moreno, been in there in the 5-round wars, been in there in his championship fights, 9-5 inside the UFC, off a loss against Brandon Royval, split decision loss. He ain't going to want to go 3 fights lost back to back. Let's see what happens this weekend. For me, Emil Albazi is obviously the prospect. It's his biggest moment of his career thus far. He's older than Brandon Moreno, which is kind of ridiculous to say that because Brandon Moreno's been inside the UFC for a long time. 30 years old. He's the slight favourite, and I agree. I'm giving the Brandon Moreno the slight edge. I think he gets the job done. His boxing, we know how good his boxing is. The way he holds his hands out, it looks like his open arms slaps everyone. But it's good. I love Brandon Moreno. He's just fantastic. He's got the custom shorts on as well this weekend. Let's see how it turns out. But in my favour, I'm going Brandon Moreno, and I'm edging it. I think he can block the takedowns threats of Emir Albazi, and on the feet, I'm definitely sure he can piece him up. His boxing is slick. Absolutely. If there is a few fighters in the world that I could watch for the rest of my life, it's Brandon Moreno. He's slick, always in a great fight, always brings the fight. So this weekend should be good. But I think Brandon Moreno is going to be even more eager to get back in that win club because 2 losses back to back. This one, the third one, he ain't going to want to lose this one. He wants to get himself back into that title picture, and it starts this weekend against Emir Albazi. A guy who's, as I mentioned, 17-1, trained out of London, now at Extreme Couture. So this one is no pushover, a prospect, a good one in Emir Albazi, but I think Brandon Moreno wins. I think he's going to show the levels of who he's fought in the past at the 5-round fights, the championship fights. I think it all comes out this weekend.
Yeah, I'm very happy to see Brandon Moreno back. This guy did so much for the Mexican MMA scene. He really started that movement that resulted in 4 champions. And now he finds himself in a position where he has to rebuild after losing to Brandon Royval and losing his belt to Alexandre Pantoja in a very competitive fight. Amir Albazi has not fought in a long time. His last fight was against Kai Kara France in the Apex, and that was a fight where the majority of the audience thought that Albazi lost the fight because Kai Kara France was the guy that landed more shots and landed the bigger shots. I felt like it was a bad decision. Albazi's greatest strength, in my opinion, is his grappling. But Brandon Moreno, you usually don't see him out grappled completely. Like you see the Alexandre Pantoja fight, it's more so Pantoja getting his back and keeping that position. It's not like Brandon Moreno's totally helpless there on the ground. And you see him get submissions of his own, including the rear naked choke that got him the title. So Amir Albazi, I don't think is going to be able to dominate Moreno too often on the ground. And even if he does, whenever they're on the feet, it will be Brandon Moreno landing more strikes and more eye-catching strikes. Amir Albazi has this karate style where he darts in and out, and he will land big shots here and there, but nothing that will rock Brandon Moreno, who has shown an incredible chin. So Brandon Moreno, I think, has a cardio advantage, a boxing advantage, and he has a higher output. So that will lead to him getting a decision victory.
Agree. Pretty much spot on. I'm looking forward to seeing Brandon Moreno back this weekend in a fantastic fight against Emir Albazi. 17-1. A fantastic record. We're going to find out what he's really about this weekend against the former champion in Moreno. Let's talk about another former champion, Rose Namajunas. versus Aaron Blanchfield. Rose Namajunas is one of my favorite fighters of all time. I love to replay her fight against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, where she knocked her out the first time. Her fight against Wei Li, she's produced some fantastic moments, some of the best moments in UFC women's history. She's 11-5 inside the UFC, coming off 2 wins against Amanda Ribas and Tracy Cortez. And we spoke about this before where she beat the eyelash out of Tracy Cortez. Now she takes on Erin Blanchfield, who, if you asked me a few fights ago when she beat Talia Santos, I would have said, yeah, this girl's the real deal. I love everything about her. I think she's fantastic. I think she's probably going to go on and beat champion. But then she fought Mano Flore, and I feel like there was a little bit of doubt in my mind where I feel like, okay, I look at this and I feel like Rose Namajunas can win this fight. I think Rose Namajunas has some. Obviously, we know how good her grappling is. I feel like there's even a submission victory off her back, or even on top, or reverse in position. I feel like Rose Namajunas can get a submission victory. We know how good she is there, and striking as well. We talked about karate last time out with Amir Albazi. Rose Namajunas as well has some of the best karate too. Her kicks, her punches, how long she can make herself at range. She can piece up Erin Blanchfield, and that's where I see the fight going. I see Rose Namajunas clipping Erin Blanchfield at will. She's going to hurt her a couple times. I'm not too sure whether she'll finish her. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see a Rose Namajunas finish against Erin Blanchfield, who against Mano Flore I felt was getting hit a little bit too much. And if there is someone you don't want to get hit by, and if you get hit by Rose Namajunas, she's a lethal little finisher. I think she wins this weekend against Erin Blanchfield. Not easily, but I think she controls the fight.
Yeah, this is a very interesting fight for me because I think it's going to be the told you so fight of the week because I'm taking Erin Blanchfield to win a unanimous decision in this fight. Why? Because her last fight was against Manon Fiorot. Manon Fiorot beat Rose Namajunas. Manon is a big woman for 125. She's got this really physical ability to just dominate people in the clinch, defend takedowns. That's what she did against Rose Namajunas, who really couldn't get much grappling offense going. I believe Erin Blanchfield is going to enjoy a lot of physicality advantage in this fight. Rose Namajunas, obviously a champion at 115. So I don't think she's going to have that same ability to defend the takedowns against somebody as great as Erin. She can defend takedowns from Amanda Ribas and Tracy Cortez, but I believe Erin is better than those two women that I listed. So I'm expecting Erin to close that distance, get those takedowns. And if you've seen Erin Blanchfield on top, it is a nightmare. Almost nobody can do well off of their back when Erin is on top. She won an Eddie Bravo Jiu-Jitsu Invitational when she was not even 20. So she's been a high-level grappler for quite some time. And Rose Namajunas, sometimes we see that grappling look good, but sometimes it looks pretty bad. If you see the Zhang Weili fight, she gets taken down a lot in that fight. The Carla Esparza fight, she had 2 of them with her. In the first one, she gets choked out very long time ago. But the second one, I feel like her game was shut down by the fact that Carla Esparza was going for those takedowns the whole time. And she even was able to get a couple. So I'm going to go on the side of Erin Blanchfield, the younger fighter with more strength, in my opinion. And that's going to matter here. The change in weight class for Rose has resulted in her not having a championship ceiling. I believe at 115 she could still be a champion, but at 125 it's just not going to happen for her. So I'm going with Erin Blanchfield.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree on the statement of not being a champion at 125 pounds, but I still think she's a legit championship contender. I don't think she beats, as you mentioned, I don't think she beats the champion on, obviously Mano Flore and stuff like that. So Rose Namajunas back this weekend, former UFC champion against Erin Blanchfield, who was a fantastic prospect. 25 years old. Great to see, young contenders come through. She's a slight favourite. Let's see how she gets on against Rose Namajunas this weekend. Next one, we've got Derek Lewis versus Gervonta Dennis. Derek Lewis has been inside the UFC for a ridiculous amount of time. He's 39 years old, about to turn 40, which is, crazy. Dennis, 33. He's young. He's 8-0. I say young. He's young in the heavyweight career. It's always a big test when you taking on Derek Lewis. The thing is with Derek Lewis, you know what he wants to do. There's a path to victory for Derek Lewis. and he's just got to knock you out. If you look at his last fight against Rodrigo Nascimento, he knocked him out. Before that, obviously he lost to Jalton Almeida, Sergio Spivic, Sergio Pavlovich, Taiju Avasa, guys who he's meant to win against. He wins, but the top five, that's where he loses. Obviously, he lost to Jalton Almeida, Spivak, as I mentioned, but I feel like this is a tough ask for Dennis. He's 8-0. If there is anything, no, we know how good the kickboxing is of Dennis, the Brazilian. He's been in glory. He's been on these big stages in his his kickboxing career. We're gonna see how it turns over into MMA. Obviously, on his UFC debut, came in against Austin Lane, put the lights out. Now, last fight, fought Carl Williams, 10-1, who Carl Williams was at the time, beat him by unanimous decision. Now, I do believe this is a huge step up. I know Derek Lewis might not be the most technical, the most greatest fighter at heavyweight, but he's been around, seen the who's who. Let's see how he gets on this weekend. Oscar, throwing it over to you. Are you going with the Black Beast, or are you going over the Brazilian?
I'm very confidently picking Derek Lewis in this spot because this is a fight where he's not fighting a grappler. He's fighting a guy that will happily start with him. And usually that leads to disastrous results. Jonathan Janice in his last fight, he fought Carl Williams. And that fight, in my opinion, exposed the limitations of his striking. That was the fight where you would expect a wrestler like Carl Williams to struggle on the feet against Janice. But if you see that third round, both of them are tired, and it's fairly even. Janice barely edges him out. Carl Williams, a guy who has now been cut from the UFC, is having a competitive striking fight with Janice. So I believe Derek Lewis needs one. Just lands one. Janice topples over, and the Black Beast does his signature celebration. And even on the ground, Derek Lewis has a huge advantage there. Janice been taken down easily before by guys like Austin Lane. So Derek Lewis has shown an ability to take down guys before and smash them from on top. So don't be surprised if you see Derek Lewis implement some of that wrestling. But I'll say round 2, Derek Lewis gets that knock.
An interesting one this weekend on the main card between two heavyweights. Let's see how it goes down. I've also got Derek the Black Beast Lewis. Next one, Caio Machado against Brenson Ribeiro. A battle between obviously Caio Machado, who's formerly a heavyweight, trimmed down now to 205 pounds. He takes on Ribeiro, who's obviously 15-7. Both 0-2 inside the UFC. If there is ever a win must needed this weekend, it's either one of these guys, and they're paired up, they're matched. Oscar, how does this one play out? Machado, who obviously, he's cut down. His last weight was 251 pounds. Now he looks to make 205 pounds. Touchwood, he makes weight this weekend, and we see him fight. But do you think this drop down to 205 pounds for Caio is good?
I believe it is. I don't think he was naturally a heavyweight. I just believe he had a little too much size on him. You look at him now, he's shredded down. He looks in much better shape, if you ask me. And if you look at how he matches up with Brenton Ribeiro, from a size perspective, he's actually an inch taller and not a huge discrepancy in reach. So I think he's going to do just fine here. And I believe he has the advantage everywhere in this fight. Brenton Ribeiro has been knocked out multiple times. I believe he's been submitted before. He's fairly fragile. And if you look at Kai Machado, he's a guy that can comfortably go to decision. Sure, he did a lot of can crushing in his day. He fought a 54-year-old man twice, but we don't judge over here. Kai Machado, I think, is gonna steamroll Brenton Ribeiro here. Maybe get a finish, but ultimately he's just gonna be outpacing him the whole time. Kai Machado has landed north of 100 significant strikes before a heavyweight, which is hard to do. So now that he's a little lighter, I think he can throw even more if he wants to. And he's not going to be too scared of that Brenton Ribeiro power out there because Kai Machado does not have durability issues. So if he wants to, he can beat him easily on the feet and on the ground. I think his black belt in jiu-jitsu will serve him well as well. So Kai Machado is a great pick for this Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. Brenton Ribeiro, if you look at his losses, the majority have been ending with a finish. So vulnerable, getting knocked out and submitted. Let's see what happens this weekend. Is it Bigfoot or is the Gorilla? Two fantastic nicknames, by the way. Let's move on to the next one, 185 pounds. Marc-Andre Barut, Power Bar versus Dustin Stolfus. This one for me is Marc-Andre Barrier. Obviously, he's Canadian. He's going to have that home, the home crowd. He's coming off a loss against Joe Pyfer in his last one. Dustin Stolfus. I mean, if for UFC 308 would have been bad for Dustin Stolfus because he was in a lot of highlight reel knockouts on the end of them. On the end of it, we saw a lot of him getting knocked out, and I feel like this could also be his fate this weekend. I'm picking Powerbar to get a knockout. He produced a knockout against Julian Marquez back in 2023, and obviously Jordan Wright as well. If Powerbar can unleash, his bombs and connect on the chin, I think he knocks out Dustin Stolfus, and that's exactly what I'm picking this weekend. I think Marc-Andre Barrier picks up the crowd after a great night and gets another knockout for the Canadian fans.
I'm going to agree with you here completely. I'm a huge fan of Marc-Andre Barrier. He trusts me to announce his fights, and I thank him for it. Dustin Stolfus, on the other hand, has gotten steamrolled so many times in the UFC. You almost forget how many times it's been. He got choked out by Rodolfo Vieira, choked out by Joe Mershart, knocked out by Abis Magomedov, knocked out by Bruno Ferreira. This guy will go to bed when things get tough. That's just how it is. Marc-Andre Barrier is completely the opposite. This man thrives the longer the fight goes. Unfortunately, his last fight was not too long. He got knocked out by the ultra dangerous Joe Pyfer. Stoltzfus does not have that power. He's mainly a wrestler. And if you look at these recent Canadian fights, these judges do not care when the American guy's just trying to get control time. They want to see that damage from the Canadian. That's what we're going to see. We're going to see Marc-Andre Barrier doing all the damage here. And I mentioned the judges. They're not going to be needed because Dustin will be gassed in round 3. And Marc-Andre Barrier is going to pile it on. He's going to make him quit in there. I think he gets that TKO in round 3.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about Marc-Andre Barrier getting gassing out. This guy can go for days. It's ridiculous. Next one at 170 pounds, and the first one on the main card is a battle between Mike Malott and Trevin Giles. Mike Malott, I said before we went on the podcast, huge prospect coming out of Canada, one of the biggest that we've had in recent times. Beat Johan Lenice, beat Adam Fugit, finishing these people as well, and he, knocking out Mickey Gall. He took on Neil Magny, and I said this before we went on air. To get to the top, you've either got to beat you've got to beat these sort of guys to challenge and move on. We have it in heavyweight, with Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades, etc. Neil Magny is that guy at 170 pounds. If you beat him, you move on, and you're going to go on for the top 10, top 5. If you don't, you're always going to be a guy at the top 25, top 30. And that's where I see Mike Malott. I thought he was dangerous heading into that fight with Neil Magny, and I don't like the cardio of Mike Malott. Not great, but he's fighting Trevin Giles, who I feel like very vulnerable as well. I feel like if you look at his 6 losses inside the UFC, we've seen him knocked out quite a few times. None other in his last one against obviously Carlos Prates starched him. Does Mike Malott probably have that power and that ability to knock out Trevin Giles? No. But I just feel like he's going to cruise to victory in this one. I'm picking Mike Malott. He's a moderate favourite according to Tapology, but I'm confident Mike Malott turns to winning ways. Let's see what happens this weekend. Oscar, who have you got?
I got Mike Malott, and I actually think he does have the power to knock out Trevin Giles. As you pointed out, Trevin Giles has been knocked out many times, even by the middleweight champion Dricus du Plessis back in the day. So he's been taking this damage for a very long time. Mike Malott, I think, is going to be fired up by this Canadian crowd. He's going to have a huge chip on his shoulder because that Neil Magny fight was a horrible luck. He was winning that fight. He was dominating that fight even, especially on the ground. And I believe that tired him out, all that grappling. So I think on the feet, he's going to swing those bombs, and Trevin Giles is going to slow down a little bit come round 2. And Mike Malott being I would say he's just got a lot more to fight for. In this case, I believe Trevin Giles is going to be just so diminished by all these losses. I don't think he has that confidence anymore. I think Mike Malott is going to demolish him, fire up that Canadian crowd and get some momentum going.
Absolutely agree. Next one on the prelims is the prelim headliner, and that's Errol Wani versus Pedro. I'm joking. That is Zahedi versus Pedro Munoz. Pedro obviously been inside the UFC and obviously been at a staple inside the 135-pound division in bantamweight. As of late, though, not looking great. Obviously, he had that no contest against Sean O'Malley, win over Chris Gutierrez, and then a loss against Marlon Vera, a loss against Kyler Phillips. And now he takes on Zahabi, who I feel like this is a fall down in ability, talent. I feel like if you look at Pedro, who he's been fighting in recent years, his losses: Frankie Edgar, Jose Aldo, Dominic Cruz, Marlon Vera, Kyler Phillips, all top 10, top 5 material. I think he can beat Zahabi this weekend. Unfortunately for the Canadian fans and the Canadian crowd, I feel like this one's not going to go their man's way.
Yeah, this is a very tough one to pick because Pedro Munoz is historically a guy that remains in the top 15 whenever they give him a young up and comer. He tends to beat him, even if it's like Cody Garbrandt. But whenever he fights these legends, these established names, yeah, that's when he tends to lose. And in this case, we have Pedro Munoz at 38 years old at 135, and that's bad news. And especially with how many fights he's had and how hittable he is. This man is the most hittable guy in the whole division because of how durable he is. He takes one to give one. And with Amin Zahabi, he's been around a long time, but he doesn't fight often, so he's not taking all this damage. Instead, he's just training with his brother Faraz, who is one of the most accomplished coaches in the history of the sport. So he's sharpening those skills, and he looked incredible when he fought Javed Bashran, who was an undefeated Afghani prospect. He goes out there and beats him convincingly. So Zahabi's getting better. Pedro Munoz, on the other hand, I believe he peaked a couple years ago, and he's probably on a decline. So for that reason, and also the fact that we have these Canadian judges being influenced by the Canadian crowd, if it gets close, they're going to give this decision to Zahabi, probably 29-28. So the pick is going to be Amin Zahabi to get this win.
Yeah, I'm rooting for Pedro Munoz. I think he gets it done this weekend. Excited to see Pedro back anyway. Always an exciting fight. As you mentioned, takes 5 to give 1. Always an exciting fight. So let's see how he gets on this weekend. Ariane Lipski, the Queen of Violence, taking on Jasmine Justinius, another Canadian prospect. Jasmine, obviously, inside the UFC. As of late, not looking. I think she got 2 wins back to back against Pusha Carrera and Fatima. Her losses are only to Tracy Cortez, Natalia Silva. Other than that, she's won and she beat the majority of the competition. Obviously, her only loss outside the UFC comes to Ellis Reed. This one though, Ariane Lipski, she's 6-6 inside the UFC. Being inside the UFC for a while now, she's fought some of the best competition. But she's lost against some of the bad competition as well. She's lost against Priscilla Cashier. She lost to Karine Silva. She's lost to Montana De La Rosa. She lost to Antina Shevchenko. And not a lot of people lost to Shevchenko. No, I mean, Antonina Shevchenko, but you know what I mean. But yeah, this one this weekend, I think the pick is Jasmine Justinius. I think she beats the Queen of Violence pretty handily. I think this one's, for me, is quite an easy pick. Jasmine Justinius, I believe, is better, got the better wins. Ariane Lipski, I just don't rate her. I think she will beat the lower competition, but as soon as it gets to the mid or the higher competition, that's where I think she'll fall.
Yeah, I think Tapology needs to update their website. Not only is Ariane Lipski no longer Lipski, she's Ariane Da Silva. She changed her name. She also changed her nickname. It's not the Queen of Violence anymore. It's just the Queen. And that says a lot to me because it shows that she's not the same young, aggressive woman from KSW that a lot of people became endeared with. It shows, kind of a retreat from the violent nature. And I don't like to see that because that's what she needs to win a lot of these fights. Jasmine Justinius, on the other hand, very aggressive, put on the performance of a lifetime when she fought Priscilla Cachoeira. I believe she broke the record for strike differential in a women's MMA fight in the UFC. So she's super aggressive. Her wrestling is going to do the job in this fight. Also, I would say she has the cardio advantage here. This is just a bad matchup for Lipsky. I don't think she can defend too many of these takedowns. And even on the feet, Jasovicius is very eager to trade in there. I just like what she brings to the table here, especially with a fiery Canadian audience. It's going to go a long way. And Jasovicius will get this decision victory.
Yeah, completely agree. This one's going to be good this week. I'm looking forward to how it plays out. Next one that should be good as well. £135. Charles Air Jourdain against Victor Henry. Victor Henry, I think, is 135 pounds is just stacked, and adding Charles Air Jourdain to that is just ridiculous. 28 years old. He's looking to get a win this weekend. Obviously, they both are 6 and 7, as you can see there. Last time out against Gene Silva, got absolutely knocked out. I mean, Gene Silva's got some power in his hands, so no shame in there. Charles Jourdain versus Victor Henry. Victor Henry had that no contest with Javid Basharat, but then in his next fight, he got back to winning ways, if you want to say that. I like Victor. I think I think he's slick on the feet. Obviously, we've seen, Rafael Sensao is his only loss since joining the UFC, but he came into the UFC and he beat Hani Barcelos. And at the time, Barcelos was, a lot of people were saying like this guy's legit, going to be, top 5 material. He came in there, Victor Henry put it on him and got the victory that night. I like Victor Henry in this position. I think he can beat. I think he can beat. I've completely slipped in. I think he could beat Charles Jourdain. Charles Jourdain make it as a £135 debut this weekend. That also concerns me because at £145, I thought he was big. £135, he's going to be massive. Let's see how he gets down to the weight. This weekend it's going to be fantastic. Another great fight. This one probably could be my pick of the fight of the night. Ridiculous. Charles Jourdain versus Victor.
I really think this is going to be an entertaining fight.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I'm going Victor. Who are you going with?
I'm going to have to agree with you. Victor Henry has a really high striking output. He showed it off in his debut against Hani Barcelos. Charles Jourdain, on the other hand, he's a very fun fighter to watch. He's well-rounded. He has that black belt in jiu-jitsu and a great guillotine. I don't think we're going to see Victor Henry shooting any takedowns, so he's not going to put himself in danger for that guillotine. And it's going to be Charles shooting those takedowns. But down a division, there's a lot of question marks here, but historically, Victor Henry can defend those takedowns, as he did against Hani Barcelos. So on the feet, Victor Henry will be landing more strikes, but do not be surprised if we see Victor Henry land more strikes, but Charles Jourdain lands the more eye-catching strikes, and the judges gave it to him in a split decision. So I keep on going back and forth on this one, but I will have to go with Victor Henry ultimately, but I don't feel good about it.
Yep. Next one, at heavyweight, we've got Alexander Romanov versus Rodrigo Nascimento. You mentioned Nascimento last time out. Obviously, he lost against Derek Lewis. Romanov as well. One of the big prospects that we had in MMA a few years ago. Everybody, was excited to see where he goes and go in the future. What's going to happen after his win against Chase Sherman? He fought Marcin Tybura, decision loss. Then he fought Volkov, gets finished on the ground. He fought Blagoy Ivanov, and you thought, okay, this guy could maybe, bounce back. Then they feed him Jailton Almeida. Jailton Almeida submits him. I don't like Romanov. I feel like he can beat these, the lower contenders, like Jared Vanderaa, like Marcos Rodrigo de Lima, Rock Martinez, etc. This one, to me, is an absolute toss-up between who's going to win this one. I'm firing over you to Oscar. Is it Rodrigo Nascimento or Romanov? Who are you going with?
I really like Romanov in this spot because, sure, Romanov lost to those really good guys, but Nascimento, I feel like his whole career he's been booked against these low-level guys, except that Derek Lewis fight where he got smoked. But outside of that, I just feel like he's had these underwhelming performances across the board. He always tires out in those later rounds. Same can be said for Romanov as well, but I just don't like the body language from Nascimento across the board. Doesn't really have that power. I believe Alexander Romanov is going to be the more physical of the two. I think he gets a couple takedowns here and there, but if you see his fight with Ilir Latifi, he actually was able to fight 15 minutes fairly comfortably. So I think Romanov edges out a decision here, but expect to see it get very sloppy in the later stages.
Absolutely. Let's see what happens this weekend at UFC. How do you spell it? Is it Edmonton? Edmonton, yeah.
It sure is, yeah.
UFC Edmonton in Canada. A lot of Canadian prospects. It's going to be good. Let's see how it gets down this weekend. Another great prospect is Sahi City. Came through the extended series, 135 pounds. Another addition to the stacked 135-pound division, the bantamweight division. He made his UFC debut last time out. He lost via split decision, but I still think that was the guy that he beat on the 10 series. In controversial fashion, early stoppage, all that sort of stuff, and lost a split decision. Two great guys, two great prospects. Roman Tavares, great prospect. CD, great prospect. They ran it back. He lost, but he takes a Garrett Armfield, and this one I fully expect him to get the job done. I think City is a fantastic prospect. He's been on the podcast with Oscar with Luke a few times, so I'm excited to see how he gets on this weekend in front of the Canadian fans. I think he's going to show up and show out and get a great performance.
Yeah, this is my pick for fight of the night. I think these two guys love to swing in the pocket. Garrett Armfield, in particular, has had some really good outings this year, even one in Canada in January where he fought the hometown dude, Brad Katona, and he got his arm brace out there. And I think he's going to do the same thing here against Surrey City because I think he has the ability to mix in the takedowns here, which will be crucial. On the feet, it's going to be very competitive, but the ability to mix in the takedowns will pay dividends. Also, he just loves to swing those power shots. And Surrey City showed how hittable he is in that Tavares fight. So it's a little tough to pick City after seeing how much he got hit there. So I'm taking Garrett Arfield to get that upset in Canada.
Absolutely. Going to be a good fight, though, nonetheless. I'm going with City, you're going with Armfield. Let's see how it goes down this weekend. Next one, at 135 pounds again, we've got Chad Alahega versus Cody Gibson. Cody Gibson obviously winning the top series and obviously looking to kind of go on and see what he does. Did he win the top series?
He was the finalist, but he lost to Katona.
Brackatona obviously making it 2 wins on the tough. My bad, my apologies. But he lost to Miles Johns. Then his last fight beat Brian Kelleher. Another victory on the hands this weekend. Let's potentially see against a Canadian who's 13-7, not the greatest record. Me personally, I think I'm picking Cody Gibson. Why? Because he's got more experience inside the UFC. Chad Enhager, not the greatest record, inside of mixed martial arts. He's old. They're both 37. Chad a little bit older, in terms of months. If you look, they're 10 months older ish. Reach as well. Cody, absolutely massive for the division. His reach is ridiculous. I think that plays into his factor this weekend. I like Cody Gibson by either submission. I like the ninja choke or the toss.
I agree with you here. Chad and Helger, in my opinion, looks like a flyweight to me. This guy's not big for 135. Cody Gibson might be the biggest bandwidth they got. This guy is really tall. He uses his range pretty well. I will admit that he's hittable here, but if you look at Chad and Helger's most recent fights, I feel like he's showed his age a lot. He kind of get hurt more easily, and Cody Gibson, I think, can just outpoint him here, staying on the outside, use that jab, and win the decision. Unfortunately, it's going to be a Canadian losing fairly early on this card.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got the first Canadian of the night, and that's Jamie Lynn Hoff. She's taken Ivan Petrovic. Both 1-1 inside the UFC. Ivana, obviously, she had a little stint in Cage Warriors back in her amateur career, and now she looks to make a run inside the UFC off the back of her first victory inside the UFC against Na Liang. That victory don't impress me, but she's on the record. She's on the books. She's got inside the UFC. She's got a win. Let's see how she kicks on from now. If you look at her record, a lot of submission victories. Does she do that against the Canadian prospect, Oscar? Throwing it over to you, who, she's coming off a loss against Veronica Hardy, split decision loss. Are you in favour of the Canadian? Does she kick off the night in good fashion, in good ways, to kick it off in positive momentum for the Canadian fans and fighters, or is it a loss?
For Jamie Lynn Horvath, she's on the older side, but she's got limited experience, which I really don't like to see. Only 34. I mean, she's 34 and she's got like only 7 fights. Ivana is 4 years younger. I think that's a pretty big deal here. She's going to be the better grappler here. Jamie Lynn Horth, usually she has a bit of a size advantage in some of these fights, but if you look at the stats, Ivana is actually bigger than her. So I expect Ivana to get these takedowns. She's got a jiu-jitsu background, and I think she's going to dominate on her path to a decision.
Looking forward to see how it turns out this weekend. First fight of the night for me is an interesting one. That's because we're seeing the return of Jack Shaw, the Welshman, looking to come back after it was a loss. It was a great lesson for him against John Anderson Brito, where obviously the doctor stopped it due to the cut on the shin. Before that, he beat Makwan Americani. Can't take too much away from that win. Makwan, I believe, is far, far past the time now. And now he takes on Yusuf Salau, who Yusuf Salau, once upon a time, got cut by the UFC. But there's one thing that we can't discredit about this man. That is hard work. He earned his way back to the UFC, obviously by beating these contenders, beating these, the fighters on the, on the regional scene. And now he earns himself again back inside the UFC against Billy Quarantino, submits him. Fights Joanna Aarons, submits him. So now he's 2-0 again in his second run in his career in the UFC. He takes on Jack Shaw, who maybe when he was undefeated 3 years ago, I would say, yes, this guy's legit, and we might see him go to top 5, top 10. But I feel like we're seeing a bit of vulnerability as well. Like I said in the past, with someone else on the card. But Yusuf Salau, I love Yusuf Salau. I think it's fantastic, and he's the moderate favorite according to Tapology. And unfortunately, as a British man, I've got to agree. I think Yusuf Salau gets the job done. I think what we've seen from Yusuf Salau on this second run inside the UFC has been spectacular. I think he gets the job done. And he's only 28. It's ridiculous because he's so young. He got into the UFC so young, got cut from the UFC so young. He's back. I think he's going to get the job done and get Jack Shaw. I think this is a Yusuf Salau 2.0 that we're seeing.
Yeah, Yusuf Salau is a new man. What he did at Billy Quarantillo was outstanding because Quarantillo is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, never gets out grappled like that, and Salau was able to finish that rear naked choke. And for Jack Shore, he had a good run at 135, but he couldn't do the weight cut anymore, so he moves up, and you see him get just out-muscled constantly in this division. The only win he has is against Makwan Americani. Makwan Americani is the king of gassing out in round 2. He either gets that submission in round 1 or he guesses out. There's no two ways about it. That's exactly what happened. Jack Shore was able to choke him out in round 2. Yusuf Salau, I believe, has the physicality advantage here. And also on the feet, I believe he's a lot more refined in that area. So I think Salau is going to beat up Shore on the feet and on the ground. I think eventually he gets his back and finishes a rear naked choke. I really like Zalaw's new grappling heavy style because he used to be a lot more of a kickboxer, but you see him now just attacking that neck straight away, and I like to see it. So I think he gets another submission here.
Absolutely agree. Let's see how it goes down this weekend. Yusuf Salau versus Jack Shaw. Not a bad way to kick off the card. A fantastic one, 145 pounds. Some really good fights on this card. Oscar, first question. Fight of the night. Most fight you're looking forward to, and why?
Yeah, fight of the night for me. I expect it to be lower on the card. I think it's going to be Garrett Armfield taking on Seri City. That is going to be back and forth action. And the fight I'm looking forward to the most is Marc-Andre Barriault versus Dustin Stoltzfus because I'm a big Marc-Andre Barriault fan. I think he's going to pile it on the later it goes and get a spectacular finish.
Absolutely agree. I'm looking forward to Charles Jourdain versus Victor Henry, 135 pounds. That one should be great to watch. Another one is Zahabi versus Pedro Munoz. Just excited to see Pedro back inside the cage. He's been in some fantastic fights down the line. And obviously, the main event: Brandon Moreno, Amel Albazi, Derek Lewis. The list goes on. For the UFC fans and the Canadian fans, this is a good one for them, isn't it?
It sure is. As I said at the top of the show, the UFC went out of their way to put quality names on this card, both Canadian and not Canadian. So the fans will not be disappointed. And I think they did an even better job than they did in January with that pay-per-view card, if I'm being honest, with the star power here. So I think this is going to be the contender for maybe the best fight night of the year if everything goes well.
Yeah, we're going to find out this weekend. Make sure you tune in. UFC Fight Pass, ESPN Plus, TNT Sports, wherever you're located. Make sure you watch this weekend. It's going to be a fantastic event in front of some fans. The Canadian fans should be a good one, should be a rowdy one. Make sure you tune in, and make sure you tune in next week as we recap it all and preview.
It's going to be, what is it? Honestly, I don't remember, but it's, I believe, man, you really got me by surprise there. But
Yeah, I took myself by surprise, but I'll have a quick look now. So, obviously, next week we'll recap Brandon Moreno versus Amir Albazi, and then we'll talk about, oh yeah, how could we forget? We're back in the Apex, and it's Neil Magny versus Carlos Prates.
there we go.
So,
How could we forget? It's UFC Vegas 100, the 100th UFC fight night in the Apex. We all know that these are the most exciting events the UFC has ever put on. And to commemorate it with the 100th one, we have the great decision king Neil Magny taking on Carlos Prates. So if you love the Apex, you're going to love next week because we're going to bask in that glory.
yeah, this should be a good one next week. Carlos Prates looking great thus far inside the UFC. But we talked about Neil Magny earlier in the episode. If you don't get past him, it's tough to go up there in the 170 pounds. So a test. Neil Magny is is that guy if you want to be tested. We also got a banger of a co-main event. Cody Garbrandt versus Miles Johns. And we've also got the debut of ONE FC double champion Rene the Riddler. That one should be good. And he's fighting Gerald Mershaw. Another one at 185 pounds. If you got beat him to move on, that one should be a good one. So yeah, we'll leave it there. We've also got Cody Stamann. For a fight night in the Apex, this is we've got some decent names going on here.
They sure did, man. I think it's going to be an episode that everybody should go out of their way to check out because I think we got some fiery takes for that. And honestly, we're all just counting the days before November 16th. John Jones versus Stipe Miocic at Madison Square Garden. A historic event. Cannot wait to preview that for everybody.
Absolutely. Can't wait for it. A great event, Stipe versus obviously John Jones. Who knows how that's going to play out? I think John Jones, we'll talk about it when we get there. But yeah, make sure you catch us next week as we talk about Brandon Moreno versus Amir Albazi, how it all played out, and we talk about UFC Apex or UFC Vegas 100 next week, Neil Magny versus Carlos Prates. Thank you very much. A very goodbye from me and Oscar, and we'll catch you next week.